Hello, my name is Johannes Drakenberg and welcome to my studio here in Stockholm, Sweden. Today we're going to be doing a review of the Allen & Heath Xone K2 MIDI controller. I'm going to be doing this in different parts, so check out the description below where I'll post time codes so you click to the point where exactly you want to find out about. Alright, let's go. So let's start with the basic. The K2 has 52 different MIDI controls, and with the Latching Layers function, which I'm going to be talking about later, you can control up to 171 different MIDI channel commands. It has a built-in sound card with two outputs, basically headphones and the master. It has the ability to link two units in order to function on one USB port. It is a great build. It's very sturdy. It comes with a case. It has the Latching Layers function, which I'm going to be talking about. And yeah, it's a great unit. I'm really happy with it. So connectivity wise, you have the back, which has the master output. Here you have the X-Link connectors and a USB. On the front you have the headphone output. If you want to know more about the X-Link function, this is pretty much how it will look in the club environment. This being the main K2 with a master out here, the USB in, and then you have from the second K2 you have the out port going into the in port, which means this unit is going to draw power from the main unit, and they're both going to be functioning on just one USB port. Great feature. One thing with the K2s, if you link them together using the X-Link, you will need to change the MIDI channel of one of the K2s, preferably the one you are connecting as the slave. This is because they're both as standard sending on the MIDI channel 15, which means if they're both going to be sending channel 15 messages, they're pretty much going to do the same thing. So you want to switch the slave K2 to another channel. I choose 14, which means they can do different things, and you can access these settings going into setup mode, and you can see the feedback on which channel 1 till 16 on the switch matrix. The Xone K2 comes with a case included in the price, which is a very nice feature compared to the X1 that does not. However, though, I do not like this case. Quite honestly, I kind of hate it. It's very big and bulky. If we'll compare it like a little quick to the X1 case, it's super big, super big. This is the old school case, by the way. I find it very hard to open from times. As you come to this sort of point, the whole lid is falling to the sides, and it's very hard to open at times. To be honest, I never keep the lid on while going on tour because it's just a hassle. Another really bad feature with the K2s is the K2 case, is this huge wall in between the unit and the outer wall. This would be great if you're going to World War III or something with your MIDI controller, but if you are just going on tour and you kind of, keep a good eye on your units, I don't think this huge wall is necessary at all. Basically what it does is it makes this case very big, which means you can't pack it in most of the UDG bags. Also, the lid has this huge, you see how thick that is? It's 1 centimeter of just shock foam, which just makes it so big. What's good about them though is the function that they do work as a stand in the club. Basically, you take the bottom part of the case, you put it like this. Let's see if we can get a little better angle here. That will work. You place the K2 onto the case, and there are some, I don't know, lowers down. So you have the rubber feet is going down really nice. So it sits really nice onto this case, and it does elevate the whole unit to the same height as any, the Pioneer CDJs or any sort of standard club dimension mixer or turntable or CDJ, which is a really nice feature, just like the X1. It does also, the length is the same as the CDJs and the Pioneer mixers and the Xone mixers, which is really good. The sound card has 4 outputs, 1, 2, 3 and 4. So these 2 are the master output, which you connect to the mixer. This one is the one you connect to your headphones. I haven't been able to notice a difference between the Audio 8 and the K2's internal sound card. Sounds really good. I actually also heard a comparison online before checking this, well, actually buying this unit, and I wasn't able to hear a difference. The master output is a lot stronger than the headphone output for obvious reasons. Obviously you would want to have a high output for the mixer and then a low one for the headphones, as they're easier to power. I do think that putting the small jack connector in front of the unit for the headphones is kind of bad. I would prefer to have the big jack here instead, as if you would use a heavy cable with you know, when it's screwed like that, I get the feeling that it's bending the connector a lot. So what I did is I replaced my cable to a much lighter one. What you can also do is you can plug in another cable to the mixer, so you have the pre-listening onto the mixer itself. So you have 2 channels on the mixer, one for the master, one for the pre-listening. Yeah, otherwise it's great. It's great to have the sound card built into the unit. It's super nice because you only need 1 channel if you use the internal mode and if you're happy with the connector up front. Really, really nice feature. I do want to mention as well with the sound card, as if you use the K2s with the 1 USB each, you can link them together, so you get 8 outputs in total if you do want to connect it to the mixer using hardwired cables. I haven't really done that myself because I don't have any sort of need for it, but it can be done if you're using a Mac and a PC, of course. So a little bit of comparison between the X1 and the K2 is obviously the size is, the K2 is a lot bigger, it's a lot thicker, but they do feel, they have the same sort of weight to them. This one, it has more metal to it, feels a lot more sturdy, the X1. It's a really stable unit. I love this one. The bad thing with the X1 though is, of course, the lack of the sound card and that it cannot be linked with another X1 unit. However though, I really like the buttons on the X1. They feel really responsive, really fast. The encoder's push is very, very clear. There's no, you can call it fading, I don't know. It's really fast and nice. The clicks are really accurate as well, and the knobs, they have a click at 12 o'clock, they click. And it's, if you're not a media mapper, this is a great out of the box. The mappings are great, it functions really good, it's really, you can really change a lot of things, really, really simple. And everything is written out so you don't have to think. Going over to the K2, it has a lot more hardware controls on there. It has the 4 faders, it has more knobs, it has more encoders, and has these buttons next to the pots. What I don't like about this though is the buttons, they feel a little bit slower than the X1. Same thing for the encoders, they feel kind of slow as you push them. As you turn them, the clicks are smaller, so to say, than the X1. And the knobs does not have a click, which if you want to use this as a mixer unit and you're used to the clicks on a normal DJ mixer, it can take some time to get used to it. However though, I like that it's I use 2 of these K2s. I use one for the mixing and one for the effects, and I like the feature. You know, I have channel 1 here, the volume of course. You have the EQ, 3 knobs, and you have kill switches for the EQs, and then the encoder up here, which is really nice. Another thing with the K2 is the build quality on the encoders. You have the bolt below the encoders, which means they're gonna last for a very, very long time compared to the X1, which does not have the bolts below. And also the thing that you have the audio card and the ability to link them together is super nice. a super nice advantage the K2 has over the X1. As for the case, of course, the case did not come along, the X1, you have to buy it separately. This is the first version of the Traktor X1 case. It's not available anymore. The newer one is a little bit bigger, but I think it's a little bit more stable. There's also one from UDG, which is really thin and small, and it's inspired from the old school one. Case-wise, comparison, see this, the K2 case is huge in comparison, and it's also, it's not as thick as it's huge, as the X1 case relies on these walls inside to lever the X1 up. These one are stable, but they're not super stable as the K2 case. However, though, this one does go into any sort of bag a lot easier than the K2 case does. And well, like I said earlier with the case, this one you can go into World War III with, because it's really, really hard, and it has a lot of foam inside, so you protect your unit. This one is not as hard, and if you're dropping your bag from an airplane, I don't think your X1 is going to survive, sadly. Sorry about that. Another thing with the X1 and the K2 is that if you would map a out message, let's say you have effect 1, and this is the dry wet for effect 1. Let's say you map an out message to this button right here, which means that the more you turn this knob, the dry wet, the LED output will increase from 0 to full, so it would be like a dimmer on a light. It's a really nice feature. You can do a lot of cool things visually and feedback wise with this feature. However, though, with the K2 I have not been able to get this to function correctly at all. Actually, what happens if I do the same thing here, this is a dry wet, this is the output. As I turn it this way, it would not happen anything until you hit 50%. That's when it will turn on, and nothing else will happen the more you turn it. So it's basically, the LEDs can only be switched on or off, which, if you're like me, you'll want to have a really good visual feedback of things, and you want to have this blend feature, which is really nice in Traktor. You cannot use this on this one. At least I haven't been able to get it to function. I didn't get it to work on the first time, and then I just didn't try to fix it. If you found out a way, or if it's I'm just being retarded, then please send post a comment below and let me know how you did it. Another really nice feature about the Xone K2 is the Latching Layers function. This basically means that the K2 have 3 different layers: red, green, and amber. And this is a great feature for people who are not very experienced in media mapping, as it will allow them to switch layers inside the control, and they will see what they'll be doing. They don't really have to fiddle around with the modifiers and everything. And there are 5 different options for these latching layers. To switch between these options, push the power on encoder and then plug the USB cable into the computer. It will flash 3 times, and that means you're in setup mode. Here you can change the MIDI channels and the latch layers. So we'll go into latching layers and push power on setup. So there are 5 options, as I said. Number 1 is latching layers is totally deactivated on all controls. This is what I use, and I'll explain why later. There is option number 2, which means the switch matrix here, the ones that lights up, are affected by the latching layers function. There's the third one, which means all the switches lit up will be affected by the latching layers. However, though, the knobs will not be affected. The encoders will though. There's a fourth option, which means all switches on the entire control, basically everything that lights up, is affected by the latching layers. And there's the last one, the green one, which means every single control that lights up, including the faders and the knobs, will be affected by the latching layers. Now, why do I deactivate the latching layers? Simply because I prefer to have full control over everything myself, so I basically made the same thing but with modifiers and Traktor. This is because When using latching layers, if you're in the red layer and you want green output on one of these buttons, that is impossible because you can't access the two other colors from the one layer you're inside. Which I want to have that feature for visual feedback and a more appealing visual feedback with 3 different colors in the same layout. Also, I like to be able to have full control of what is inside the layer. So let's say for this mixer unit I have the switch matrix in the same layer, I have the faders in the same layer, but the knobs are not in the same layer. And the switches here can be altered as well. I can control what I can alter with my own layers instead. I like to do it like that, but then again I like media mapping a lot. As you can see, they are the same height as a standard mixer or CD unit, which is really nice. And I basically wanted to talk a little bit about how it was for me to switch from using an audio 8 card and connect one cable to each channel, going to the internal mode of the K2. Basically, mixing on the mixer itself is obviously has a lot more feeling attached to it, mainly because I've been DJing for 9 years with a normal mixer, and then all of a sudden I'm supposed to be mixing on this small unit. As you can see, the faders are a little bit apart, you know, the knobs are apart. Knobs feel really nice and have the click in the middle, and you have the gain control and everything. It has a better layout, the faders are a lot quicker, and you have the cue here. On the K2, the faders are kind of slow with the studio fader knob. The EQs does not click, and they're really cramped. It's kind of one good thing about them being cramped is that you can modulate 2 with the same hand if you want to do that. Sometimes I do it. Another nice thing with this is that you have the kill switches if you map it like that. The kill switch is below every EQ, which is obviously very nice. If we say you have all 4 channels up and you want to mute 3, it's really simple with the normal mixer, and you know you can clinch this 3, turn them down, turn them up really fast if you just want to cut them all 3 out for 1 beat. With the K2 it's possible, but you can't really cramp them the same way. You can put 1 finger each, but it takes a lot of motion to the unit. As you can see, it moves a lot when I do that. So I mean, it sounds like it would only be a problem to battle mixers, but I don't know, it's nice to sometimes just like do a basic trick, and I do that sometimes, and I find it harder on the K2 than on the normal DJ mixer. Also, the queuing options in Traktor versus a Pioneer, for example, I like the Pioneer a lot more because you have the individual PFL, which you do on the K2 as well. What the K2 and the Traktor does not have is the ability to turn Q on master on and off. The K2 basically functions as the Traktor, basically functions as the 92, which means if you turn it all the way there, you only hear the Q, and the more you turn it towards the master, you only hear the master. On the Pioneer though, if you have it towards the master like here and you push this button, it will turn on and off, which I really like. So for me that is kind of a drawback, but I guess I'm just gonna get used to it. There is no real button for the PFL. What I did is I mapped it to these buttons, 1, 2, 3 and 4, and then I have the deck 1, 2, 3, 4. That's how I did it. And then I have the I hold this button, I turn the left knob for volume and the right knob for mixing between Q and master. I think I mixed better on the normal mixers compared to the K2 because I'm just too used to these units, you know. However, though, I'm kind of learning the K2 relatively fast, so I hope relatively soon I'll be mixing as good on the K2s as I was on the DJ mixer. I think it's just a learning curve. I think I've had the K2 for 3 weeks, and I've done I think 4 gigs, or no, maybe 3 gigs, I don't know, and I'm improving every time. So it's a give and take. You don't need a sound card with all the cables. but it's a little bit more cramped on this one. If you're willing to compromise feeling for simplicity and connectivity and everything, then I think the K2 is a great option. So let's do a overall wrap-up of the Xone K2. We'll start with the pros, of course. So it has a built-in sound card, both for master and the headphone output, which is super good, because you only need one channel on the DJ mixer, and then you connect your headphones here. No problem, no mad DJs after or before you, no hassling with millions of cables and audio cards and knowing which cable is which. It's really nice to just have one cable for the mixer. If you're using the internal mixing mode, which I'm doing, you have the same setup wherever you go in the world. You know exactly what you're working with, which is a huge advantage if you are not able to request whichever mixer you want on a technical writer, as in if you're not a super, a big name DJ basically. There's different LED feedback for different controls. You have 3 colors, green, red and amber, which is great. It's visually appealing, and it's also very practical to see what you're doing when you relate things to color. As everyone knows, colors is really easy to relate to. It has a lot of controls, a lot of different controls. 6 encoders with a push, 4 different knobs, studio knobs on there, and you have the 12 knobs up here, which they're really nice. You have the switch matrix, kill switches below them, and 2 buttons for system control, you could say. It has the 4-channel layout, which is great if you use 4 channels in Traktor. Basically 1 fader, EQ, that's how I use it. It's really nice. There's no preset mappings printed, like the X1 has all these different command printed on the controller. K2 does not have it, which allows, if you're mapping it yourself, you don't get confused basically, and it looks cleaner. I mean, I wouldn't like the fact that this button would say FX1 on. I like it to just say nothing and I know exactly what it's doing. It has a great build quality, feels really sturdy. I don't think this unit is going to break for a long time, which is really good for me, because then I know I can rely on it wherever I go and whichever club I go to. Also the faders have some sort of a beer-proof mechanism, or whatever you say, I don't know, which is also really nice. The ability to host 2 K2s on one USB port using the link functionality is really good if you're using a MacBook like me, because that means you can use a sound card on the other port or some other controller. You don't need to use a USB hub, which is really good because I hate USB hubs. Yeah, that's about it. It comes with a case that functions as a stand. This is included into the price. Really nice. Now let's go for the cons. The MIDI out messages, basically when the LED lights up, can't be blended in Traktor, which means if you would map a, let's say the dry wet of effect 1 to this LED right here, on the X1 it would increase the brightness of the LED the more I turn the dry wet, whereas on the K2, as I reach 50%, that's when the LED turns on. I haven't been able to get this to work. Maybe you have, but from what I know, it's impossible to use the blend function in Traktor, which is a huge drawback if you make complex MIDI mappings with visually appealing effects for maybe the phase out or master out or something. It's nice to have the blend feature on the LEDs. This does not have that for as far as I know. The headphone out is a small jack, or whatever you call it. It has a different name in every country, it seems like. I would prefer to have the normal jack, this connector basically, because if you're using a heavy cable which is on most headphones, the cords, the cork, I don't know what you call it, you know what I mean. Basically, if you're dancing and bouncing around, the cable will, it feels like it will break the headphone output pretty fast. So what I did is I switched my cable to a lighter version, not to break the headphone output. The fader pots, I personally don't like these studio designed pots, because let's say you have all 4 channels up, you want to mute 3 of them really quick over a beat, just, you know, like it's kind of hard to get it tight and nice, and the whole unit will be moving as you do this, as it takes a lot of motion doing this, whereas on a normal DJ mixer it's really easy to just clinch all 3, go down. I would prefer to have the battle knobs on here, and it's possible to install them, but it's gonna take a lot of modification, because it's kind of in the opposite way of how it should be. But they do work great. It's just minor cons I'm like looking for, you know. There's no middle point on the knobs, where if you're used to a DJ mixer and you're using this as a mixer, it kind of takes a while to get learned where the middle part, you kind of have to look a little bit, or you know, you have it in your spine and you know where, when you turn it into the middle. But there's no feedback as there is on a normal DJ mixer, which in the beginning of this, using this, it was kind of irritating. It's a little cramped compared to a normal mixer. Obviously it's a small MIDI controller that's supposed to fit in your bag, but feels really, everything is really tight compared to a DJM or a Xone 92. That's a give and take. I mean, obviously you can bring this everywhere, you can't bring a DJ mixer everywhere, but yeah, just so you know, it's a little bit cramped, it's a little bit tight. But the good thing about that, though, if you can take a pro into the cons area, is that you can turn 2 EQ knobs on 2 different channels very easily, which is, it could be a good feature if you wanna, you know, increase the mid and lower the bass. You can do that, it's nice. The encoder clicks and the button clicks, they feel a little bit cramped. It feels like there's a slope when clicking them. There's not just this instant click as there is on the X1. You can feel when it clicks the button. On the coders it's like same with the buttons. The Ethernet cable that comes along with the units is, number 1, really short, and number 2, it died after 1 day of using it, which I think is really bad. What I did, I took a Pioneer CDA 2000 cable and used that instead. I guess it has a lot longer time span. The one that comes along is just about this long, which is, it works if you're putting them next to each other, but if you wanna put them, you know, spread them out across the booth, it's not possible. It's a bit big for UDG standard DJ gig bags. With the case that comes along with it, it gets too big. I personally don't use these cases. I just keep these in my bag as they are, with towels in between, because this case is just, it's made for World War III. It's really, you know, it can take a lot of hits, but I don't see why you would want to have something so, you know, well made. I would prefer to have something like the X1 case that is a little bit slimmer and nicer. I don't know. I hope you understand what I mean. I'm gonna build my own case for these, because I just think the case as it comes along is just too big. And other cons, I don't know. Overall, I really like these. I would give these, you know, I think a 4, because they're really nice with all the connectivity and everything, and also it's just a very nice unit. You can do a lot of things with. If you use 2 at the same time, you have a lot of potential to do a lot of different things. It's great for Ableton and Traktor. It's not getting a 5 because some of the cons, such as the case, the blend function for the LEDs, and some other small things. But overall, I think it's a very great unit. I recommend it to anyone touring a lot. I recommend it to people that play in lineups where you have a DJ in front of you and behind you, because it's gonna save you and a lot of other DJs the stress of disconnecting and connecting cables into the club mixer. That's pretty much why I got this unit, because people playing after me got really stressed by me just unplugging things. Even though I know what I was doing, they don't know what I'm doing. You know, they don't know if I know what I'm doing, if you know what I mean. And it's nice to keep a nice and, you know, healthy, what's it called, environment into the booth. You know, because the second you're going to be unplugging cables from someone who's really stressed about cables and such things, there's going to be a lot of argumenting, and you don't want to have that when you're starting to perform, or you don't want to have that kind of relationship with other DJs. So it's great to just come to the club and show the other DJ playing before you, okay, I have one cable, it's everything I need, and you step away. It's really nice. It takes about 2 minutes if you're quick, and if you connect everything at once, it takes 2 minutes. Even less if you're really fast. I mean, go figure. It's one USB cable, your headphones, your master out, and the link cable in between the both, and then put the case up wherever you want. You're done. It's really good. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this review. If you have any questions regarding anything, regarding me, regarding the K2, the X1, or whatever you may wonder about, just don't hesitate to post a comment below. And I would really appreciate if you would support me on my social networks so I can keep on buying these new MIDI controllers and review them for you. Alright, I wish you a great continuing of this day, and I hope you learned something about the Heath Xone K2. Alright, have a good one. My name is Drakenberg, and cheers.